Hi everyone, Gigabeef here, and today we're going to be talking about early wipe strategy based on what we know now with a few days under our belt. So stick around and let's get going. Alright, so now that 12.11 is out, there were some things that we knew were going to come and some things that we didn't know were going to come. So we're going to go over all of these bits and just kind of see what differences this might make to our post-wipe strategy, because some of them have a big impact. So the things that we knew about first and foremost, Scav Karma and the factory expansion and durability, and then things that we didn't, which are bushes and the level 20 flea market. So let's start with the things that we did know about first. So Scav Karma, I think this is an interesting one. So basically, if you're killing other scavs, then you're going to lose reputation with Fence. Fence is now the trader, I suppose, for scavs. The issue that I have is that it's very difficult to tell whether another player scav has actually killed another scav or not. There's no indicator for a hostile, which you would expect from EFT, to be honest, because that's the kind of game it is. But it makes it very, very hard. And when you're going in as a player scav, a lot of the time you're just getting killed by other people who just don't really care about their reputation because they're trying to get their hideouts up and that kind of thing. So we're going to have to see. I really hope that the rewards justify it, because at the moment playing player scav is quite rough if you don't want to be getting negative karma and guessing when you're having to shoot at people who are shooting you back. The next one is about the factory expansion. This doesn't change gameplay overall. The factory map is great, obviously, and it's a really nice, interesting thing for people to do on factory. And Tagilla, the boss, is awesome, but it doesn't change the game in a big, broad sense, right? Like, it's a new expansion to a new map. That's fine. I really, really like it. If you're a bit scared of going to fight Tagilla, you can go in offline, actually, and tick the bosses, and that forces him to spawn. You can kind of just go and see what he's like and play around with it on your own, which makes it a little bit easier. I mean, this is a good addition, but I don't think it fundamentally changes anything about our wipe strategy, because you're unlikely to be going to factory too much unless you're trying to do some PvP early. Next up is the durability on guns. I'm still yet to get a jam, and I'm using quite a lot of scab weapons with like 50% durability or something. So I think you must really have to be mag dumping to make this have a proper impact. I mean, I'm using, I would say, a 50-50 split between stuff that I'm picking up and stuff from the traders. And as I said, I haven't had one yet. So we'll see. I think it's an okay thing. It'll be a bit annoying occasionally when you're lining up the perfect shot and you get a jam, but that's Tarkov. Now, on the two things that we didn't know were coming, firstly, the bush changes, which I actually think makes a huge difference to gameplay. So now you can no longer sprint through bushes. You can't run through them like you would be able to before. They slow you down when you're going through to about a third speed, so it's quite hefty. And you're actually not allowed to go prone right in the middle either. You can go prone kind of around the edges, but you can't just lie down straight through a bush and just be completely hidden. So I think this is going to kind of change the sort of rat gameplay, I guess, and the more kind of slow and steady gameplay, sniping, that kind of thing. There's now a bit of risk reward when it comes to sitting in a bush, because if you're spotted and you get shot at, you can't just sprint back through. So I think it's actually quite good, because camping in bushes is actually really strong in EFT. And part of the reason for that is that in real life, it would be almost impossible to lodge yourself inside a bush. That's just not really going to work. And so I think this is a good thing to kind of mirror to real life and also give balance changes as well. The best changes in EFT is when they more closely approximate real life and they're good for gameplay. Those are like the primo changes. However, I think the biggest change that's on everyone's mind is having the flea market at level 20. Now, this is a massive, massive change. And I'm going to pop up a little graphic here, but you can see that originally getting to level 10 takes 75,000 XP roughly, and it takes approximately 5 times longer to get to level 20 than it does to get to level 10. So this is going to make a material difference to the game early wipe. The plus side to this is that basically you can expect to be getting that pre-wipe experience for much, much longer than before. And other than the odd streamer who's going to be getting past level 20 really, really fast, the majority of the player base is still going to be in that sub 20 category where they're not just going to be able to buy everything and they're kind of playing hardcore. I think this is actually quite good for the game because it gives people that sort of sense of playing hardcore without actually going all the way through removing the flea market and that kind of thing. And it's a really good test for BSG to actually do. On the flip side, if you don't start right at the beginning of the wipe and you're not putting in at least some hours, it's actually going to be really, really rough, and it's going to make that cliff edge at level 20 even worse when people tip over, or the majority of the player base tips over, and everybody who's underneath that is still kind of playing hardcore, and everyone after that isn't playing hardcore anymore. That's actually a real problem. It's a really difficult one for Battlestate to actually balance within the game between those two kind of competing groups of people, some who are more casual and some who are less, and there's going to be a big gear disparity between the people who have access to traders and those that don't. So let's just hop into the game real quick so I can show you why I think this is going to be good for gameplay. So I picked up a P90, which is a beautiful little weapon and would be wonderful early. 46 vertical recoil and 78 ergo. This would be really, really awesome, except for the fact that I only have 2 magazines for this thing, and I only have 10 rounds of what people would deem actually decent ammo. So I have 10 rounds of SS190, which is kind of a late game round. But other than that, I actually have no way of buying any more bullets for this gun whatsoever until Peacekeeper level 2. And even then, it's going to be a really, really mediocre round. And so this goes to show, right, I can't just pick up something and run it in the raid immediately. Because if this was level 10 Flea instead, what I would be able to do is pick up this P90. I'd be able to rush myself to level 10. I'm already level 7 and I've played for one evening. Basically then, I've got 10 rounds of this stuff. Other people will also have 10 rounds of this stuff, and there'll be 20 people who aren't using the P90 that I can buy their 10 rounds off to run it myself. And this is the difference between having the Flea and not having the Flea. If you have the Flea, you can aggregate everybody's loot together and buy it off them because they're not going to use it. No one's going to use 10 rounds. And so if you don't have a P90 or you just don't want to run it, you're going to sell that ammo on the Flea. One person can collect it all up and basically use that end game stuff straight away at level 10. So this is going to be pushed out to level 20, which is, as we said before, a lot higher than level 10 in terms of aggression. So how does this change our strategy exactly? Well, basically, in my opinion, looting and items are now even more important than before. They were important to begin with, but previously you could push to level 10, you could grab everything, and you could trade all those things in on the flea market for the things that you need. Now, things like keys for quests are actually really hard to find because you have to go through and do the jacket runs yourself to get these keys to the rooms that you need. So the first one, which is a real blocker, is the customs office key, which has actually been renamed to the Tarkov director's office key for this wipe. And that one, last wipe, I remember distinctly going and buying this off the flea market for 200,000 because neither me nor anybody else that I was playing with actually found one. Whereas this time you have to go and find it yourself because you're really not going to be wanting to wait until level 20 to get it. Hideout items are also really important because you need the items just to get started in the hideout and make the modules. And because you can't sell the things from the hideout on the Flea either, it's going to make it even trickier to actually make money early on. On the flip side, some of the really early stuff, like the customs office key, I actually think won't be that expensive on the flea market at all, because by the time that you get to level 20, most people will have actually already completed that quest. Maybe I'll be wrong about this, but I just feel that because people have been forced to go and find this, and they'll be passing the keys around to their friends or other people, that by the time you actually get to the flea market at level 20, people won't really need them anymore. So I think the items that you should be focusing on are the things that are either the hard to get stuff for like level 1 hideout or the things for level 2 and 3 hideout modules, because those are going to be the ones that are in hot demand. People will already have built most of the level 1 hideout modules before getting to level 20, and so it's the ones kind of in that second up tier, like the next level, that they're going to be wanting to get when they actually get there. One really nice quality of life thing that they've introduced is this sorting table here, which you just pop out at the bottom of your stash. What this does is this gives you a grid that you can put stuff into, so you can sort things out and, move things around so that you're not having to like mess about trying to put bags on yourself and bags back into the stash and all this kind of stuff, which I think is quite nice. The one place I would have loved them to put this is in the scav screen once you finish a scav raid and you're trying to put stuff back in your inventory, except it isn't there. So the most useful use case for this, they haven't actually done. So I really hope that they change that because that would be really, really super cool. So one final point I wanted to make is about weapons and ammo. So one interesting observation that I've made is that I've run into a lot of people wearing level 4 armor. I know there are some extra level 4 armors as well that have been introduced for scavs that they spawn on AI scavs, and I've looted some myself. And what this means is that some of the lower tier ammos that I thought were going to do quite well, like the MP5 with PST ammo and that kind of thing, I've actually ended up struggling a little bit and doing a ton of armor damage when people are wearing level 4, and they get a few level 4s in their starter kit anyway. So really, I'd said it in my other video that I think that 762 PS is going to be really good, but I genuinely think 762 PS is going to be like the winner of the early wipe at this point. It's like considerably better than everything else that you can get. And the two guns that you can use the 762 PS with, firstly from Jaeger, unlock him nice and early if you can using mechanic. Just run through to woods and just try and finish that quest, because that'll also help you finish debut if you haven't found the 133s. Even though they're out of stock a lot, it is possible to buy them if you sit on the timer. I know it's pain, but yeah, the OPSKS you can buy from him, which is really, really good. You can buy the basic one with the iron sights from Prapor. So if you want to put a scope on, you have to buy the one from Jaeger. If you don't want a scope and you just want something basic, you can buy the one from Prapor. Remember that from Peacekeeper 1, you can now buy the 20 round magazines. You're not going to be using your dollars for much else unless you're trying to buy some of these other bits and pieces, or you're buying like Berettas or something. So the 20 round SKS mags are actually really cool. If you take 2 into raid, then you can actually just swap them between the 2 mags when you're in the raid, rather than having to top load like you used to with the old SKS. The only other gun is from Skier, which you potentially could use, which is one of the VPOs, the VPO 762. You could put a Bastion on this and then some optics. There are now a couple of extra optics in the game at early stage. There's a MRS from Skier. So Prapor still has the EKP, which is the one that mounts onto the dovetail, but this is sold out all the time. Remember, by the way, that he actually has the Shade. The Shade gives you +3 ergo. This is probably the best ergo for rubles in the entire game. +3 ergonomics for 109 rubles is crazy. So he has this dovetail one, which fits on things like the SKS, right? But the problem is that it's sold out all the time. Now, one thing that you can do, On Jaeger, if you get him unlocked, another reason why it's important to unlock him is that you can buy the Axion Cobra dovetail mount, which then allows you to attach this normal Cobra onto it. And you can still buy the Shade, but this allows you to do something very similar. It's not quite as nice and it is a little bit more clunky, but it does allow you to still mount a scope. And you don't even need to use the EKP. You could use something else. You could use the one from Skier, or you could go to Peacekeeper and use either the Burris or even the Delta Point if you want, even though it is a little bit more expensive. So I do hope that that was useful for everybody. Just a quick rundown of my thoughts. I know this video is probably going to be less edited than my usual ones, just because I wanted to get something out on the weekend to tell everybody how I was feeling about the game and how this sort of affects what we were thinking a couple of weeks ago when I made kind of my pre-wipe preparations video. So that's really it. Absolute best of luck, and thanks for watching as always.